But this is the character for mindfulness, and it's made up of the character for presence over the character for heart. So mindfulness is presence of heart. My working definition of it, I have a lot of different ways to describe it, but the simplest one is it's moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness. So moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness cultivated by paying attention. Think about it. The species name is Homo sapiens sapiens, the species that knows and knows that it knows, from the Latin verb sapere, which really means to be in touch, to taste, to be aware. I want it to be completely commonsensical, you know, that if mindfulness has to be so clear and so commonsensical that your mother or my mother would say, of course, why didn't I know that when I was 20 years old? I mean, that makes total sense. Yeah. There's no reason in the world not to want to be more in touch with the, you know, the sort of potential for balance, flexibility, and strength in one's own mind and body. But a lot of people think, oh, if I have to meditate, I'll lose my mind, I'll get weird, people won't like me, or I'll get very self-involved. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with cultivating greater self-compassion, and then greater compassion for others, and greater wisdom, and greater clarity, and then navigating your life, or your company, or your country for that matter, in ways that really help people feel that they belong, and that their lives are meaningful. Teachers yell at their kids to pay attention in the classroom, but they never teach them how to pay attention. Our whole system of education cultivates and refines critical thinking. I'm sure you'll agree with me. Where is the education that cultivates and refines awareness itself? How much training did you get in thinking? A lot, I think. It's all based on thinking. Okay, so the balance is out of balance in a certain way. Now, why is this important? Well, I like to say it's because awareness may be the final common pathway of what makes us human.
Och visst är det märkligt att vi lever i ett samhälle där vi har kontroll över mycket i våra liv, men vi har inte kontroll över våra tankar, vi har inte kontroll över vårt medvetande.
I det här samhället som vi lever i så är uppmärksamheten extremt utåtriktad, alltså riktad utanför sig själv. Man söker efter allting utanför sig själv. Lyckan finns utanför sig själv, och all tillfredsställelse finns utanför en själv. Det finns inte tid för introspektion. Det är en otrolig massa stimulans och stimuli som man plockar in, och man hinner inte bearbeta den.
Jag tycker det är viktigt, vi som sitter här i riksdagen, men också andra beslutsfattare, att man får tid att reflektera. Jag har alltid varit fascinerad av Dag Hammarskjöld. Det var det som inspirerade mig att lägga en motion om stillhetsrum i riksdagen. Och nu fortsätter jag arbetet med att få in mindfulness i riksdagen. Jag tror det är bra för mig, jag har testat själv, men det är också bra för andra.
We've done follow-up studies, up to 4 years of follow-up studies on our chronic pain patients, 3 years on our chronic anxiety and panic patients. There are studies of cancer patients, follow-up with 3 or 4 years. This is a generalizable phenomenon. In 8 weeks, something happens that then the majority of people keep practicing in one way or another. And if you ask them 10 years later, they're still practicing. And if you ask them if that was meaningful to them, that 8 weeks way back when, they will say, that might have been a turning point in my life. A lot of people say that. So this is not some quick fix or some nice weekend workshop or a nice 8-week vacation. This is about the rest of your life. One of the things that did happen is that in 1998, we published a paper that demonstrated that people with the skin disease psoriasis, if they were meditating while receiving ultraviolet light treatment for the psoriasis, their skin cleared at 4 times the rate of the randomized control group that was just receiving the ultraviolet light itself. This is a study we published back in 1992 on anxiety and panic disorder, just to show you that when people come into the stress reduction clinic, they are relatively high in anxiety on the Beck Anxiety Inventory. This is the 8 weeks of the stress reduction clinic, and then at the end it tends to stay down. We've done it for up to 3 years of follow-up, it stays down. So an 8-week intervention, 3 years later people are still in the post, sort of symptom state. Same for depression. And mindfulness cognitive therapy came along, and I don't know if you're familiar with these slides, but take a look at this. This is the age of onset of major depression at this point in time. This paper came out in 2007. You see where the peak of the age of onset is? 13 to 18 years of age. That's staggering. That's an epidemic. And then this is, if you can see these, this is how it's changed over the past 100 years. And gradually the age of onset has gone up, 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 so that in the old days the age of onset was much, much higher. You didn't get depressed until you were in your 60s, and then 30, then it got lower and lower and lower, and now it's here. It's an extraordinary social phenomenon, not just in the United States, but all over the world. Our children are getting depressed. What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with it? And we're not talking about any old depression. We're talking about major depressive disorder. How many of you recognize this person? Do you know who this is? This is Mathieu Ricard. He's a Frenchman. He went to the Pasteur Institute and got a PhD with François Jacob in molecular biology. And then he went to Nepal and he met some Tibetan teachers, and he decided he wanted to know why they felt so happy, basically, so good. He met these people and he said, they know something I don't know, and I don't see it at the Pasteur Institute. Even among highly successful people, they all seem kind of grumbly and existential and, sort of whatever. And he's saying, I want to find out what's going on with these people. And he actually became a monk, and he's been a monk now for over 40 years. And here he is being wired up in Richie Davidson's lab with, a 150 electrode helmet to do EEG studies, such as these, that now many monks are volunteering to go into the laboratory, meditate in scanners and in, with quantitative EEG. And you can see these are psychology undergraduates who've been training in meditation for 2 weeks, and these are monks who've been training on an average for 35 to 50,000 hours. Okay? And you can just see the brains are different. And what they can do, neuroscientists until very recently thought was not possible, one of which is sustain attention voluntarily for as long as you want to watch. And then shut it off in a second, and then turn it on, and shut it off, and turn it on, and even under stress, be in different relationship with distractors and so forth. There are now all sorts of paradigms that are being developed to test this in social phobics and various other kinds of people, and to train people in mindfulness, and then seeing major changes.
You would think that an enzyme in the cell couldn't respond specifically to our psychological states. How could it be sensitive to thoughts and feelings? It's so far removed. But the data is looking like there are these intimate links. There's an enzyme discovered by Elizabeth Blackburn, who won the Nobel Prize for this discovery, an enzyme called telomerase. So this enzyme is very interesting to us. It is looking like it is responsive to our thoughts and emotions. So for example, we've done a study where we had people give a speech in front of an audience that was stony-faced, and they weren't smiling and nodding. We're used to people giving us positive regard. But when they had to do this speech, this is a standard stressor. It's called the Trier Social Stress Test. This is a way that we know that stress mediators, cortisol and sympathetic activity, go way up and then way back down. So we wanted to know if this affected the enzyme telomerase, and in fact it did. So during this lab stressor, telomerase shot way up in most of the subjects. So this is very interesting that the cells are, in a sense, listening to our stressful bodily states, to our thoughts, and then probably to the chemical changes in our body during stress. The tendency to wish that you were physically somewhere else or were doing something else. This was related to shorter telomeres, and the tendency to be very engaged and focused and absorbed in what you're doing was related to longer telomeres. So this really blew us away. We were really surprised that this one item Well, actually, these two items were both independently related to telomere length.
There's some kind of profound shift that may be happening all the way down to the level of gene expression, for all we know, because now, aside from telomeres and aside from neural correlates, we can also look at the upregulation and downregulation in epigenetic studies of hundreds, if not thousands, of genes associated with meditation practice. And when you do that, I'm not going to go into this at all, but you see major shifts in hundreds of genes that have to do with oncogenes, inflammatory genes, and so forth, downregulated under certain conditions. And this is a Dussek paper on the relaxation response, and upregulated other genes that have to do with health and well-being in one way or another. So again, the science of this is in its infancy, but the potential has never been greater. We call what we do mind-body medicine because it really is bringing that dualistic Cartesian separation to it, to an end. If you're the leader and you think you know everything, you'll surround yourself with people who tell you what you want to know. And they won't tell you what's really going on. Then your business could easily crash and you'd be the last to know. But if you are in touch with the business and in a very, in this day and age when things are changing so rapidly, one day your business is very successful, but if you're not thinking about like how to take advantage of the next emergent possibilities, you could actually lose your edge competitively very, very quickly. So there are very important questions involved in the cultivation of mindfulness in the organization. And part of it involves reducing the level of stress, increasing the level of security and comfort, and the level of creativity and a sense of ownership, so that everybody is participating in the leadership rather than just one big person at the top telling everybody else what to do, but without being in touch with what the real energies or the needs are. Everybody has to find their own path. And yes, you do start by following guided meditation instructions, and we have lots of different methods and techniques for doing it, but ultimately you have to make it your own. And otherwise you're just imitating somebody else, and that is not authentic.
So what would you say to a new instructor? What would you advise to when you come to a new group?
Well, first of all, experiencing that sense of humbleness is very important, because it's such a great responsibility to help someone to befriend their own mind and their own body, especially when they are carrying a huge amount of pain around in them. And so one has to do it with a great deal of sensitivity. And the most important criteria for an effective mindfulness teacher would certainly include empathy and compassion and an awareness of one's own ego and ambition. So that it's not to say that we don't have ego and ambition, but if they get they can very easily get in the way of any kind of true rapport. So the bottom line is, be honest with yourself and trust your own intuition and your own honesty, and only talk about those things or only introduce those aspects of the practice that you already do have experience with, and don't go into philosophizing and all sorts of speculation and big theories about things that you don't actually have first-person direct experience of. That will keep you safe, But seeing if you can rest in an awareness of the body as a whole, sitting here, right now in this moment, breathing. So that you're just resting in awareness. The breath is moving in and out of the body as it has been since you were born.
Is it easy to describe, or have you tested, where is the point of transformation for the participant? In the groups I have had, it's like, I get so surprised that it's quite fast. People have so strong connection with themselves. So What would you say is the transformation point? Is it where they see themselves, when they can witness themselves? Is it when they feel acceptance in a group? Is it when the awareness meet awareness? Or in a scientific point of view, where do you think?
That's a beautiful question. And I'm really touched that you're doing this work yourself and teaching people yourself. And after the kind of trajectory that you've had in terms of your own meditation practice, 15 years of practice before actually trying to share it with other people, that's really admirable. And I don't think there's one particular point. I think that it's like now, and that people can have different mini experiences of connectedness that goes beyond anything they've experienced before, and they continue to practice and have new experiences of it. And it's almost like a perpetual flowering, or almost like a flowing waterfall of, or fountain, where it just keeps spilling out, and you recognize or realize certain elements of it, and other elements of it. It may take you 2 or 3 years, and then you recognize and realize that. And it's an ongoing, really a lifetime engagement. And that's one of the reasons I love it so much, is that it's kind of really the adventure of a lifetime. There may be that sense of the weightiness of the body, the contact points on the floor, or with the back of the chair, the backs of your legs, and the elevation of the head. And we're not trying to go anywhere. We're not trying to get to any better moment. We're simply bathing in this one as we let the in-breath and the out-breath just flow through us. As if we were stepping out of time altogether and just being here in this timeless moment we call now. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to pursue, nothing to attain, nothing to get. Just resting here. Just resting here, being who you already are. With no agenda other than to be fully present. Not pushing anything away, not pursuing anything. Pure awareness expressing itself. You can't possibly share something that you haven't experienced yourself in a deep way. And actually it's somewhat irresponsible to do that, because when people ask you questions about the meditation practice, if you are not very deeply grounded in your own meditation practice, how will you be able to answer their questions authentically? So in fact, you won't be teaching mindfulness, you'll be teaching some brand of your own idea of mindfulness. And the way we like to put it in English is garbage in, garbage out. So the more you create something that's really not mindfulness, the more people will be talking about mindfulness when it won't have anything to do with what we really mean by mindfulness. That's always a danger when something becomes very, very popular. I've devoted my life to mindfulness moving into the mainstream, so I'm not against people having a very strong desire to bring it into their work. But I think that it's very important, because of what mindfulness really is, that it be done in a way that really is grounded in their own first-person experience of the meditation. So all we need to do in some way is trust our own experience and then use the guidance appropriately to get us started. But ultimately, we'll be able to figure it out for ourselves, and we become our own best teachers and best friends, and then life itself becomes the teacher as well, and the practice.